computer. All right. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the first session of the day 2 of the Victoria Cycle Project Technical Gathering. This is for the OpenStack Manila project community, and I'll be dropping in a link to the Etherpad that we have been using. And off the top, you can see the topic for today. This is a short 45-minute session and all we're doing today, this morning, is CephFS updates. And Victoria Martinez will be leading that session. I encourage all of you, in lieu of, I mean, we don't have a lot of time for introductions and such, so please leave your names and nicks in the sign-in sheet so we know you've been here, and we can follow up in case of questions and such. The sign-in sheet's at the top of that Etherpad that I just shared. But otherwise, Vicky, it's all yours now.
Everybody, all right. As Gautam mentioned, we have a really short amount of time, and we have several topics we need to touch base on. So you have the PTG Manila Etherpad, but for this specific topic, we prepare another Etherpad which I'm sharing you right now. You have it on the main Etherpad, but it's on the chat as well. Wait. There we go. Okay, so we split the session in 4 parts. There are many things we are planning to do for this cycle on CephFS drivers updates. The first part is about updating version itself. We're going to dedicate 10 minutes more or less to that. Then we have a section to talk about a new feature we are thinking about, which is screen share from a snapshot. We continue with Manage for CephFS drivers, and we finish with some future work that is happening on the Ceph side, which is Ceph Manager interaction with NFS-Ganesha. So we have 10 minutes for each section, and yeah, we will try to do the best. So the first part is about update for CephFS drivers. So this is kind of basic updates work we need to do. Up to now, we have been running on the gates with Luminous for both CephFS native and CephFS NFS. And we need to update mainly because there is a new component on Ceph newer versions, which is Ceph Manager. This is an optional component in Kraken requiring Luminous, and it's going to be the single source of truth for managing CephFS exports from Ceph Nautilus onwards. Right now on the drivers, we are using a library which is going to be deprecated soon-ish. I want to say soon-ish because basically the Ceph team is maintaining this one for us mainly. It is currently in Nautilus and Octopus on a master, but the right thing to do is to start using Ceph Manager for handling all the operations we are doing. So we need to migrate sooner or later, and well, this is the proposal we want to do for today. So considering that there are some gaps right now on the Ceph Manager and the Ceph Volume client, we have decided that we are going to follow with a incremental approach by basically porting all those commands that we can do right now with Ceph Manager and fall back to Ceph Volume client for those commands that are not yet implemented. We only have one condition for this. We are going to, from Victoria onwards, OpenStack Victoria, I mean, we are going to be depending on Ceph Nautilus. This is the minor version that we are intending to support for Manila. This is basically because we cannot guarantee that there are Ceph Manager command implemented for prior versions. So this is the approach we are going to take. At first, there was an idea of actually keeping both, well, having a wrapper client basically supporting previous versions and newer versions. And you have a link there with a previous patch, but honestly, it doesn't make much sense because basically we are going to continue supporting something that is not going to be supported anymore on Ceph side. So we decided to go directly clean and do this from once and all and just migrate directly without so many wrapping code and so on. It's just, it doesn't make sense. So a lot of work have been already started on this path. I have been working a lot on testing how Manila is currently behaving on this with Ceph Nautilus. There are some changes in CephFS Steps plugin. You have the link there. These changes were to, well, start running all the Tempest tests that we have for CephFS native and CephFS NFS. And it's not yet merged, but it's almost ready to merge. We are just making sure that it doesn't break anybody that is depending on this change. And also we have been working on migrating some of the shops we have to native service rate. I need to add a link for that one. So, okay, this is the plan for this one, and I am almost done with the first 10 minutes we have. So any comment or question about this one before I move to the next topic, which is creation from a snapshot?
Yeah, so what about the upgrade? Do you need to do anything in terms of format of the system as you go, let's say, from Luminous to Nautilus, or from Kraken to Luminous, as a part of the upgrade?
This is probably a Ceph question. On the Manila side, it shouldn't be any issue, but maybe I see John on the call. John, do you know John Fulton, I mean, any concern about the upgrade path for this one?
Sorry about that. I understand you're talking about the update, and I'm not worried about the update itself. Maybe an alignment of versions, but that seems more downstream to me.
So John, two angles there. So one angle, as you go from one version of the Ceph to another, irrespective of the files, irrespective of the front end, if you need to change the format or anything else as part of the upgrade of one version of Ceph to another. And the second one is the one you brought up, that as you do the Manila one, basically the front end of the Manila.
So this is Tom Barron. So Manila works with CephFS and the MDS. So really if you're the level at which you might be thinking about, are you going to do Blue Store or something like that, is kind of out of scope.
Correct.
You can deal with that as an independent Ceph issue. For CephFS itself, I don't think there are issues with the upgrade, no special stuff that needs to be done. And then on the Manila side, as Victoria said, we should be fine when you upgrade the Ceph cluster from, say, Luminous to Nautilus, which are the versions we're testing with.
Okay, so then the answer is
Kraken,
Blue Store update store is outside of the scope.
It's out of scope for Manila, just like, how CephFS and the MDS are relevant here.
But do you need to change the configuration on the CephFS depending upon if it's a Blue Store or not?
No. I answered briefly, but no.
Okay.
Now, one thing to observe is that in Luminous and prior CephFS snapshots were considered experimental, and in Nautilus and so on, they're considered fully supported. And in Manila, the flag for snapshot support is off by default and will remain off by default for backwards compatibility, but one could consider turning it on when one does that upgrade. And that should just work.
Thank you.
I say just
All
work.
right.
There's a command you issue to CephFS to tell it to enable snapshots as well, but that's documented in the upstream CephFS backend from Manila.
Thanks, Tom, Arcadia, and John. We also have Julio from the Ceph side as well. Thank you, Julio, for joining as well. So you may get some questions. Okay, so moving quickly now to the next one in sake of time. So clear from a snapshot. This is maybe one of the another main motivations we have to move to do this update to Nautilus. Because we get this feature from Nautilus onwards natively on the Ceph side. We can perform this very easily using the Ceph Manager implementation. And well, on the Etherpad, I drafted would be the next, these two steps that we need to take in order to implement this. A discussion about this started regarding Manila CSI, but this is something that probably we are going to be discussing on Friday when the Manila CSI discussion takes place. But there are some notes on there. I devised some challenge on this one, apart from the fact that, well, the implementation should be straightforward, but we were thinking about creation from a snapshot in our pool. This is something that you also get for free thanks to the Ceph implementation. Basically, you need to put an extra param there, and that's probably all that you need. And also, there is the concern about the how bulky is this operation on the Ceph side, but there are plans to optimize it in newer Ceph versions. So also, this is a motivation for us to upgrade, to continue the path of keeping updated versions of Ceph and Manila. Any specific questions for this one? We need to draft maybe an implementation plan for this, but it's ongoing and there is a blueprint there you can check. And probably this is going to be the first step we are going to follow after the PTG. So questions, comments? Okay, taking that as a no. Moving to the next one, which is the manage and manage operation. Gautam, do you want to take the lead for this one?
Yep. All right. So this is probably one of the things that you would think of in terms of as a day two operation. And we've supported this in Manila for a long time, but not with the CephFS drivers. So what does this mean? It is basically a way to import or export off Manila resources and I mean, bring it into Manila management and then take it out. This is mainly used as a way to do, let's say, a cluster migration. So if you're moving from one Ceph cluster to another, and you've somehow handled the data migrations outside of Manila, but then you want to get this new cluster configured with Manila, this is one of your options. The other use cases were being if you were to do something with your OpenStack clusters, and this could even be, a drastic backup and restore procedure, or a, you want to move from one OpenStack cluster, all of your existing management to another OpenStack cluster and stuff. Of course, the other use cases, which are a little more subtle because of the, I mean, operators are used to using manage and unmanage as a way to do share type retypes. So technically, they could be toggling some bits in their share type, setting some extra specifications. But you know that share types are mutable, but at the same time, they're not exactly going to affect anything that was previously provisioned on that share type. So if you'd like for some provisioning action to be reapplied to an existing shared file system, you'd use you unmanage the share and try to and bring it back into Manila management. Retype's another use case where you're actually planning on just moving the share type itself. You're decommissioning an old share type. You've created a new one with probably a new specs, but you would not want to move the data. Manila provides a generic migration framework, but you don't want to use something like that because you don't care about moving the data. All you need to do is change some metadata on your shares. So that's another yet another use case for manage, unmanage, and yep. So technically, to support manage and manage, there are a few things that were required. I mean, of the Ceph cluster, the expectation from Manila, at least, is the user or the, I mean, by default, an OpenStack administrator role, somebody with that role presents an export path. They say they claim this is where the share is or a sub volume is on their Ceph cluster, and Manila passes that down to the share driver. At this point, it does not know whether that is a valid path. It doesn't know the some other attributes of that share file system, including the size, the export paths, any access rules, etc. So the expectation from Manila is that the driver then picks up this, validates it, and evicts any unwanted clients, and returns a modified export path along with the size of the file system for quota calculations and such within Manila. Uh, so there is another use case which is manage with a bigger size or a smaller size. So you could actually club managing your share with extending your share or shrinking your share at the same time. Um, so all of this is handled at the driver level with visibility to the administrator via subsequent asynchronous APIs. And so the only missing gap I think that I wanted to call out was neither in the Ceph volume client nor in the Ceph manager client, there's a way to straightforward rename a file system. And it's not a big gap. There is a way to work around that in Manila. But it just appears to be something that the driver doesn't currently do. The CephFS driver uses Manila metadata in order to track what file systems exist on the what subvolumes exist on the Ceph cluster. So if we have to do some more tracking in the driver, that's possible, but not very desirable. So if you were if we could add those commands to the clients on the Ceph side, we should be able to get this in a more straightforward fashion. And the other thing that comes up is why evict existing clients. It's because of the way the current manage and manage operations work in Manila. We didn't anticipate a need for a non-disruptive manage at the time when this came in. So Manila expects any new shared file system to start out unexported. Unexported to any clients. Nobody has access to it when it comes in, and this is because of the security model it enforces with its users. The users can then add and remove access rules on their share. So a managed share is expected to be in the same fashion, in the sense that everybody that has access to that share at this point loses access when the share is managed by Manila, and then the users of that share can go ahead and modify the access controls on that share. Um, you might ask why this is the reason. I mean, there could be a strong use case rather, for non-disruptive managers, and that will be probably discussed in the rest of the Manila PTG if the concern is that is shared by a lot of people. At present, that's not the case. So managed operations will be disruptive to existing clients. And the other improvement that I was thinking of is providing some sort of a provider location sort of thing for shares in Manila. And this metadata is going to be helpful for non-disruptive managers, or even areas like this where, for instance, CephFS does not let me rename file systems through its existing Python clients. So I could use a Manila mapping that's not the driver's private storage. It's still in the Manila database as some sort of a key value, but it's not within the ambit of the shared driver itself. It can be subject to Manila's database migrations and other management operations if we were to shift it back to the share model. So that's the gist of the use cases, what's coming. This feature is planned for the upcoming Victoria release. We've created the blueprint. You could subscribe to it for updates. That's all I had. Back to you, Vicky.
Thanks, Gautam. Any comments or questions about this one?
I do, but other people can go first because I know where to find you guys. Okay. An interesting thing about the CephFS backend and manage unmanage is that we have a CephFS native backend and a CephFS via NFS backend. And it's perfectly possible. And in fact, at this level of support from Ceph, it's likely that you present two different backends that are actually using the same file system rather than giving them their own file system in the CephFS cluster. And if you do that, normally the shares are partitioned to each backend so that a CephFS native, via CephFS native, you don't get the same shares as CephFS via NFS or vice versa. That might be a desirable thing to do, but Manila's never really supported the multi-protocol access to the same shares on the one hand, and on the other, it's not really safe yet with Ganesha and CephFS to do that. So they're the same file system, but appear as different backends. So that raises the potential of unmanaging, say, CephFS native and then managing under CephFS via NFS or vice versa. I don't know that we know that works without any glitches, but I mention it partly, I see Romana's here and so on, is something that we probably want to explore and see if it's possible. Down the road, it may be simplest just to say, hey, use a separate file system for each of them, even if they're in the same Ceph cluster. In which case, that would not be a possibility to use manage unmanage to do that. But I don't know that it's not dangerous now. I'm just mentioning it as something we want to check out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I glossed over that thing in that list. One of the other things about evicting and exporting the use case is that, which is going from CephFS to NFS and vice versa. I mean, because the clients are actually going to be different, because we're re-exporting that file system for access via a different protocol.
Yes. Yeah, and that eviction plays in there. Yeah. I just want to underscore one other thing. Are any of the people here who are consuming CephFS via Manila currently, like CERN folks or whatever? In any case, I just wanted to underscore that Vicki did say earlier that we're planning on, in Victoria going forward, really just supporting Nautilus forwards, not building compatibility code into version detecting or whatever. That's consistent with, for instance, upstream Ceph and their relationship to OpenStack. They only, work with certain releases and so on. But if anybody has any needs there that aren't getting met, you know where to find us. Talk to us. This is plan of record doesn't mean absolutely unrevisable or something. Although be prepared, of course, to help because we have limited resources. Okay, I'll shut up now.
Very much, Tom and Gotham. So we have a bit more than 10 minutes and we are just in time to talk about the last item we have in there. I see that we have Ramana on the call and it's about Ceph Manager interaction with NFS-Ganesha. Ramana, do you want to take the lead on this one?
Sure, Victoria. Yes, so we in the CephFS team are currently developing a module in the Ceph Manager daemon, where we want to not only manage the exports of NFS-Ganesha daemons that have already been deployed, that we also want to not only manage the exports of those Ganesha daemons, we also want to manage the life cycle of those Ganesha daemons. But that's something we plan to do for the Octopus release of Ceph, because we deploy the Ganesha servers using another service called CephADM or via Rook Kubernetes. We have a different system of managing the exports of these Ganesha daemons. So that's something we need to think about, how this Ceph Manager module that we plan to use going forward, if we can manage the exports of existing Ganesha daemons that are running in OpenStack services, which are deployed by the OpenStack deployment service. Yeah.
Now that's something that would involve some upgrade impact, especially for the current way. The driver operates, right? Any change in some in the exports would require the driver to redo its exports, and that's not how the driver currently behaves. Correct. Right now, probably there's some administrator intervention required on the Manila side to change the export IP addresses and probably transfer the export files and such if they were to change their existing Ganesha clusters. So if we were to go into this mode where Ceph manages the Ganesha clusters separately, that would mean that somebody who is currently using Manila with CephFS, where they're managing Ganesha on their own or deployed with Ceph Ansible or whatever, this Ganesha daemon is going to be different from the ones that CephFS is planning to expose.
Yeah, that will be a different set of there'll be a different cluster.
Yeah.
And yeah, they'll have a different set of IPs. And the question is also, we haven't thought through how we would want to expose them to the OpenStack tenants. That's another question. How do we actually deploy Ganesha daemons in the right network so that the OpenStack tenants can see them? So yeah, we haven't thought through that.
Absolutely. No, I also bring it up because we have a generic way in Manila to make these sort of management changes, and the driver can detect these and let Manila know. So there is some sort of a recovery that happens where we ask the driver what changes are required and funnel all that existing shares and stuff to the driver. So there's no requirement for these extraneous operations like the administrator having to come in and mess with the database or use some Manila manage commands to change things and such. So we should probably discuss this just in terms of uh, going from one Ganesha service to another Ganesha service. If that's something that the driver can do, then maybe we should, treat that generically and we'll get this for free.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know how that would work with, like, we have to continue supporting the existing Ganesha servers, I guess, server deployments, I guess. I don't know how we migrate the IPs across these two different kinds of deployments. So I don't know. But yeah, we should think through this.
Yeah, definitely. I guess we got to talk because I'm thinking more simplistically as this Ceph volume is exported now to two different Ceph users, Ceph Ganesha users, but it might actually be a little more complicated than that.
Yeah, it's still early days on the Ceph side. So yeah, I just wanted to give an update that we are working on something on a component that would also try to manage the life cycle of the Ganesha servers itself. And the added advantage is that this Ceph manager would deploy these active NFS Ganesha clusters, which we don't have right now. So we have an active passive service that the pacemaker Coro sync service in OpenStack makes sure makes sure that the Ganesha is highly available. So yeah, so that's another new feature we have.
Raman and Patrick, I see Patrick there too. I think this is very exciting stuff that you're working on, and I'm gratified that it's happening. I think it will probably be something we would do first with a external CephFS cluster that, almost like a separate outside appliance to OpenStack. And then later consider OpenStack deploying it. And figuring out how to integrate it into OpenStack because it requires Kubernetes orchestration and the services and so on for HA. So getting it working outside and interacting with it via the manager would be really cool. In the meantime, we've got what Victoria's talking about done for Victoria, and then she can do it for later too.
Well, another aspect of being able to talk to an external thing via CephFS commands and not directly from the Manila driver is currently, I think we have this dependency on sending dbus commands, and by default, we tend to do it as a root user, and that's not that's definitely not best practice. So we were working with this NFS-Ganesha team to try and figure out if there is a custom role we can make for the dbus send issues and stuff. All that goes away because I mean, all of that is handled from Ceph. Always good in terms of security as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely a great improvement ahead, and yeah, a lot of challenges as well. But we are going to have a few PTGs to discuss about this before actually we work on this implementation. So, future problem for future Manila team. Okay. Comments or questions about this one in general?
Vicky, one question. So for the H case, it follows the same model as the rest of the Ceph, which have a separate Ceph version running on each H site, if you want to. Is a separate file system for that as a part of the configuration for the H site.
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Was the question for edge cases, the Ceph file system needs to be configured differently? Or was that?
No, I'm just trying to confirm that currently, I think from train, the H scenario have the option to have a separate Ceph deployed on the H for the H side. And then I would presume that means that there is a separate, Manila and all of the configuration for that side.
And so that's how we would do it, Arkady. We haven't seen customer demand yet pushing for file service at the edge in the same way as block service.
Sure.
And OpenStack Object Service was just discussed in the previous meeting. But if file service were to be done there with a separate Ceph cluster, separate RBD cluster at each edge site, whether it's a near edge or whatever you want to call it,
sure.
You could build a CephFS file system there as well. Now the challenges for us is to deploy that is we really need to, and we have a topic on this, get the Manila share service, which would run at each edge in that topology, running active-active. And that a lot of that's like the corresponding work that was done in Sender. And in my personal opinion, a lot of the work is testing and working with the DLM scenario rather than work in Manila proper. But there is some work to be done in Manila proper to move file locks to DLM locks and to, I believe, decouple locks across services and deal with periodic tasks and some things like that. There is some work to be done that we'll talk about under its own topic.
Okay.
The other side is if you're using a Ganesha gateway there as opposed to native CephFS or as opposed to a backend, some of the vendor backends that handle are active on their own, then Ganesha right now is managed by Pacemaker. And in a small edge site with just 3 nodes, you don't want to run Pacemaker because you don't want to fence off a node at least in the Ceph type case, because you're going to lose 1/3 of your replicas and have a big, massive rebalancing if you end up fencing off a node. So that ties into the futures we were talking about with Ganesha for active deployment and stuff like that.
Got it.
So
okay.
most easily run in the near term, since you were talking about Ceph with CephFS native service. But CephFS native service requires that your VMs be run by trusted clients. So we can talk about that offline some if you want. You know, what we mean by trusted clients and so on, but basically VMs have access to the network right now. To the over the network to the MONs and OSDs and so on. And if they're just arbitrary VMs like in a public cloud or a large enterprise, that may not be a very good idea. So that's one of the reasons.
Okay, got it. All right, so clearly we need, I need, at least myself, need to have a much deeper dive into the file system at the edge scenario.
This is a subject that interests me, so you know where to find me if you want to talk
Definitely.
about it.
Sure. All right. Thank you.
Awesome. I think, is that it, Vicky, or did we have anything else that we wanted to cover?
No, we are done for a wrap up.
Cool. Let's do a quick wrap up. So the thing we discussed today, what we led with was that Manila in the Victoria cycle wants to improve the CephFS driver to do fancy things such as create, share from Snapshot, manage and unmanage, and these operations are better funneled through the new Ceph Manager daemon that's available from a number of releases, but then it is pretty solid in the Ceph Nautilus release for the use cases that we're targeting. And there are some missing pieces to this, and while those are being added, we will slowly transition off using the Ceph Volume client as and when those features are available on the Ceph Manager side. Which means for us, the biggest takeaway is that Manila will stop testing anything lesser than Ceph Nautilus on the Victoria release. And when I say stop testing, which literally means stop supporting, I guess, because I mean, something that's not tested should not be expected to work. So we also got some roadmap update on transitioning the Ganesha maintenance as well to the Ceph side, and that's futures and currently being worked on for the Octopus release of Octopus and the Pacific releases of Ceph. So we might get to discuss those in future PTG. So if any concerns that you folks have, Victoria is a great person to reach out to, and of course you know Tom Barron, Ramana Raja, and Patrick. They're on the OpenStack Manila channel as well. So that's all for this session. We're starting up back again at I think 2100 tonight for me, but 2100 UTC. And we're going to be talking a bunch of improvements that Douglas and Carlos want to make in the Manila API. So hopefully see you all there. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you.
Thanks
See you
all.
later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
See you.
Everyone, bye.